Ooh, yeah.
Hello, you are tuned into Inspired Humboldt, where we shed light on local cultural creatives who are uplifting and changing our community through creativity, consciousness raising, and holistic healing.
This is Patrick Walsh, and I'm Casey McLean, and we are part of A Rising Community, a local nonprofit, and one of the many Dreammaker projects of the Ink People. We'd like to thank the Ink People for the use of this space, which is in their new space in Eureka on 3rd Street, and to the Mars Project for videoing, editing, and all things technical.
So today our guest is Monique Riofrio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you came to be in Humboldt?
So I'm originally from New York, born and raised. I was definitely considered a little strange because I thought that we were all connected and made of energy. And a lot of people were just like, okay, you just did too many drugs or you're high. And I'm like, no, that's like how I feel, you know? So I had a close-knit group of friends, thank goodness, that like got me through feeling like I did not belong in New York. My parents are both from different countries, so they're not even native like to the country. So I was just like, you know, I'm gonna go find my place. And I was really drawn to California. I have an older brother, and him and his wife settled down in Truckee, so in the Tahoe area. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go to school in California. My brother's close, like, right? Great idea. So I come to California. I'm like, this is awesome. I definitely felt at home. But it was in the Bay Area, and I was like, I grew up 40 minutes outside of New York City, so I was really ready to be not in a city environment. So I went up to Tahoe, hung out with my brother, became a snowboard bum, like. It was so fun. I had a great time. So I was up there for a couple of years. I was with a boyfriend. We were going to move to Humboldt. I was like 19 or 20. Came up here and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Ended up splitting up. I moved back to Tahoe. Didn't stay here. Actually went out east for a little while to collect myself. Came right back. Like I literally got across the bridge to Long Island and I'm like, why am I back here? And I was like, cool. I like worked my butt off for a couple of months, drove right back across the country, ended up coming back through here. And I was like, I'm gonna hang out here. And I was like, I really wanted to snowboard still. So went back to Tahoe. I was there for a couple of years, moved eventually to Nevada City and met my husband there, my now husband. And he was like, let's go visit my friends in Humboldt. I'm like, yes. So we met 10 years ago and we would come up here every now and again. I was just like, I just loved it here. I'm like, the ocean, the trees, there's just something about it, right? So we're up here like 3 years ago. I was a real estate agent at the time, amongst other things we were doing. And we always look at real estate wherever we went, just out of curiosity. So we're looking at Craigslist, we find this house. It's like falling to the ground, like scary. Like I'm like, this is, like no one could live in this, but people were living in it. And we're like, well, let's see what happens. Like the price was cheap. They said owner financing. We offered a ridiculous, I'm talking like, ha ha ha. Like I'm gonna have another real estate agent do this because I don't want to represent myself. Like this is like kind of like, not okay. They took the offer.
Wow.
We were like, okay, I guess we're buying this house, and we just like, we have these weird little like gut feelings, right? We just like follow these like sporadic, like this, we just have to do this, and then kind of joking, it happens to us here and there throughout our relationship, and we're just like, wow, we made a really good decision. So we slowly started working on that house. Again, no intention of being here. We're like, we sold our house where we lived. We were moving into a school bus. We used to be in the medical marijuana industry. We were just done, right? So we're like, we sold everything, moved into a school bus. We're gonna travel the country. We don't know how long. So we were in the school bus for 9 months. We traveled around the country. We came back, sold our house, came up here, finished this. There's 2 houses on one property. Finished the houses, and we're like, oh, like we'll stay here for a little bit. And then come like May or June, we're like, we'll head off again in the school bus and go wherever and rent the houses out. So we're here for literally, we finished moving everything up here the last week of February. We're here for a week. I went to a couple of yoga classes. I met one person who gave me their phone number, and then the world shut down.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we're already used to this because we lived in the middle of nowhere. Like, we grew weed, and we were just like used to being secluded. So we're like, okay, cool. Like, we're just gonna be here. And we did that, and we were like, well, we didn't feel comfortable traveling in the school bus. So we finished the houses. We rent one as a vacation rental, which pays our mortgage, and we live in the other house, and we just fell in love with the area over the 3 months where technically, right, we weren't supposed to do anything. Yeah, I fell in love with the ocean. Like, I grew up on the opposite coast, and I didn't realize how much like my being, my spirit needs that. Like, I need the ocean, I need the sunset. It's just, yeah. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now I realize this. We love it. Like I said, I met one person who's phenomenal, and I'm just so grateful to have had like a kind of little gateway into this little yoga community, and slowly met other people and just felt really called to be here. And what I was offering online, I was doing Himalayan Kundalini, and people were like, you need to teach, you have to.
It sounds like you've been really guided on your journey. And now you have this place called the Crystalline Collective. Can you tell us how you got guided into that project?
I just got the chills thinking about it. So I met this wonderful woman named Amelia, and it was like, you know when you meet someone and you're just like, I've known you forever. Like, we just feel very connected. And she was holding moon circles, and she's like, can you teach some Kriyas at these? And I was like, sure. And we were at her house. She had like a big enough space. We're all hanging out. It was great. And then she had to move. And my space is very tiny at my house. I live in a very small house. And I was like, oh man, can I fit people in here? Like, I don't know. We didn't have a space. It's winter time. And I was like, well, how do you feel about trying to find a space? And she's like, that'd be great. We talked to some other women. We're like, if we all pitch in some money, maybe we could find a place just to be and practice. And I mean, that was going on for months, and I kind of like lost hope, and I was just like, what am I thinking? Like, rent is so expensive. And then I was actually sitting down with my nephew, visiting him, and all of a sudden, it was like Craigslist. I'm like, I have to get on my phone and go on Craigslist. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So I go on Craigslist, and I'm like looking, and I'm like, oh, there's a place in McKinleyville. So I send a message to Amelia. I'm like, listen, I'm out of town. Can you try to contact these people? And she's like, yes, price is right. We could do this. We send an email. There wasn't a phone number on this ad, right? So I send an email, nothing, for like a week. And I'm like, she's like, I'm just gonna go there. So she goes there, and it's connected to this other spot called Essential Elements. So she goes in there, and she's like, hey, does anyone know like who the owner is? I'm trying to get a hold of them. And they're like, oh, let me take your phone number, this and that. Great. Something happened, right, where like the phone number never really got to the owner of that facility, who gave it to then the owner of the building. So we were talking to another friend. They're like, oh, I know the woman that owns the massage place. I'm going to call her right now. Calls her, tells her the thing. She's like, oh my God, we've been waiting for you guys to call. The owner wants to meet you. We're like, what? No idea what to expect. I'm like, are they going to ask for a credit?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Who knows? I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay, let's just go see what happens. So we walk in there, and this like amazing man, he has like long braids, and I'm just like, he's like so like this beautiful smile where you're like, oh my God, everything's gonna be like okay, like this is great. And he's like, oh my God, we've been waiting for you guys, we want to rent it to you. And we're like, wait, what? Like literally like didn't even say our names or anything. And he's like, you guys, we want you to have the space. And we're like, okay. You know, it was a healing space originally from the people who owned it. that have lived here for a really long time. The husband was the healer. He is now not there. And the wife was like, I really want it to still continue to be a healing spot. And it just happened.
And it's such a beautiful space.
Oh,
Do you know, it's funny because Craigslist, that's how we found also Arising.
Okay.
And the
Yeah.
same thing, I had gone looking for places before, and the day the woman showed up, Romy, to like show us the space, and we want you here, like same thing,
Yes.
this totally cool woman.
Love it.
So it's one of those things so
I was
guided
just
and meant to
like,
be.
oh, like right, like
Yeah.
like I was like, oh yeah, we're supported, and yeah, everything in its time. And I was like, apparently it's time, right? Because then we were like, oh God, what? But we're so grateful. It was, I mean, it had wood floor, you know, like we just
Yeah,
painted
it's
the
beautiful.
walls, like
Yeah.
we got to put our love and our energy in there, and it feels really good. And we have a space to share, and not a lot of people know we're there yet, but
It's coming.
soon,
It's coming.
with
That's
time.
cool. I'd like to go see it.
Yes, you should come back.
Cool. So you also used to do Kundalini classes at Arising.
Yes.
Could you tell us how you came to that practice?
So I was an alcoholic slash like drug addict, I guess you would say, for a good like 10 years of my life, and I became sober when I was 30. Actually, my 9-year is November 1st.
Yay, congratulations.
And I'm super excited. Thank you. And so when I became sober, I was like, oh my God, I started feeling like all sorts of stuff. And we had a friend who was like, go to a yoga class. I'm like, no. He's like, just go to a yoga class. Why don't you want to go to a yoga class? I'm like, they're so happy. Everyone's this. And I'm like, I'm not, this just doesn't work for me. And he was like, fine, I'll come here and teach you yoga. And I'm like, all right, great. So he taught myself and 2 of my friends. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. Like, it feels good. It reminded me of gymnastics. I was into gymnastics when I was younger. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to find a studio that I like. And I'll go. So I started going. About 2 years, maybe, I was like, I want to take a teacher training. Like, we moved even further from town. So closest studio was like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And I was like, wow, it's like a 3-hour thing to like go to yoga. And I was like, well, I'll just take a teacher training so I could practice at home, right? So I'm like, when I get these ideas, I have to do them now. It's not like, oh yeah, I'll just wait till this one starts in like a year. No, I'm like, no. So I'm searching everywhere. I'm talking Hawaii, like everywhere, other states. I'm like, what's going on? Then finally, like again, I was like, oh, I should just like wait until there's one closer. And my husband's like, well, just search again. And I'm like, all right, so I'm searching again. And I find this woman, she's like doing one. It starts in like 2 weeks. I have to drive 45 minutes, but whatever, right?
Wow.
The schedule worked. I know nothing about this woman. Okay, I like saw her picture, read her thing, and I was just like, yeah, whatever, cool. Like, I seriously was just like, this is what, I just want to do this. So I go to meet her, because she was like, wait, you know nothing? Like, come, like, talk to me. And I was like, great. So I go talk to her. She's like tattoos, she's like wearing black, and like, she's cursing, and I'm like, I love you. I was like, yes, I could like be in your class and feel comfortable. And yeah, she was a therapist, and she'd been studying for many years doing that, and then also incorporating like the teachings she discovered, like meditation and just movement in the body and working with women with trauma. And I was like, wow, like this wasn't an accident.
Do you want to give a shout out to her? What's her name?
Yes, her name is Anjali Connors, and she is amazing. She's located in Folsom, California. She'll probably be up here at some point to lead something, because she's now a close friend of mine. So yeah, I was like, wow, like how divine, right? Like this is meant to be. It was amazing. So her training was a vinyasa training. Well, she incorporated Kundalini. And I was like, what? are we doing? We're chanting. Like, I don't want to chant. Like, I'm like, you know? Yeah, I'm just like, oh my God. The breath work stuff, I was more easier for, right, my ego to let go and just try. And then I started feeling these releases, and I started feeling the energy in my body like swirling around, and I was like, whoa. I felt so high. I felt super connected. Like, I felt like I touched divine, that like inside me, and I like just my whole entire being just broke open, and I was like crying, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, I don't know what's happening to me. And it was just so powerful. Just the whole journey of a teacher training. Like, teacher training is the best therapy anyone could ever go through. It is so worth it. To just discover yourself and your self-worth and self-love, like, amazing. So I had no idea I was signing up for like a Vinyasa Kundalini training, but that's what happened. And I continued to practice with her after my training. Like, I had no intention of teaching, right? I was just doing this to like better myself. I was meditating and noticed a really big shift in my being, because I was like very angry still and like working through whatever I discovered while I was in my training. Like, I really woke up to like, whoa, like why I had become an addict. Like, whoa, like, wow, okay, like seeing all these things and now being like, wow, I could like work through this. And
that makes me want to lead into another question I have for
Yeah.
you, because I know that we're
Yeah.
both interested in addiction
Yes.
studies, and there's a saying behind every aberration is an aspiration. So sometimes people are looking for a spiritual opening and they don't have the tools, and so they choose other paths. So
yes.
would you talk a little bit about your interest in recovery and helping people with that? And
Yeah, I, like I said, I realized, right, that there's potential if I maybe had access to these teachings, or these were like introduced to me as a teenager, that I could have avoided going down this like path that I did that was like super destructive, like hurt myself, hurt others. Super grateful to still be here. Really, sometimes I'm like surprised. And just being like, wow, like we don't have to go through this torture that we put ourselves through, really. You know, knowing that there is another way. There is another way, and it's fun, and it's challenging, but not as challenging as being high all the time. Like, life was so much harder. Oh, like the minute I stopped, I was like, wow, I'm feeling my emotions, but this is way easier to deal with. Like, way easier. And yeah, I was just like, wow, I saw this light of like, I've always wanted to help people, always, 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 and I was just like, I don't know how that's gonna happen. And I was like, wow, okay, so like maybe I could use this somehow, right? Still unsure. And then I continued to practice and practice and go deeper and deeper into specifically the Kundalini practices. And as I'm like releasing stuff in my body, letting myself cry, even like not knowing why, was just healing in itself, and being able to talk to people like in a group about like questions that were asked to me. And one question that really did it for me, as far as like being like, just seeing the clear picture of what happened, right? So like, I was verbally abused my entire life, or for a very long period of my life. So growing up in the 80s, right, like unless you see something on a child, they're fine. Nothing's happening to them. And it's like, I tried reaching out to adults, and it's just like, you know, I'm the bad kid, whatever. No one, I was like, okay, if this was wrong, someone would do something, right? So just growing up and being like, wow, I am a bad person and this and that, led me really to believe that there was no choice for me. Like alcohol was the choice. Drugs were the choice. Right? Like I didn't realize it at the time that I had power to stop and be like, oh, I was told these things are completely not
And
true.
society's not offering alternatives.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And especially then, it's just like,
Yeah, especially then.
it's like verbal abuse. What's that?
Yeah.
You know, like.
And yoga, and that's weird.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what's going on? You know. So, and I feel like now stuff is shifting, and even like I know so many younger people where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like yes, like there's these tools available. They're using them. They're not using all these drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, my mind is blown. I'm like, there is hope, and I love this.
And then on the flip side of that, there is also this, these new addictions like to technology and phones. And so there's like more external seeking. So how do you get people to turn inside and be self-referring and, understand how powerful that is in a world that's like kind of constantly trying to push you out of your self. Yeah.
Well, and I noticed that, especially in this big shift in the world, right? We're all kind of forced to be with ourselves, and yes, there was good things, bad things about it, but I know a lot of people that were like, whoa, I really had time to like come to myself and to seek out practices like meditation and movement
and really need them.
Yeah, and groups just to talk and listen to other people. Like in my studies, it's like we communicated, we shared story, and that's like how we released, right? And how we learned from each other and just connected. And it's just like we're not doing that. I mean, I think about myself and I'm like, when do I pick up the phone and call someone? Like, whoa, right?
One of my friends just told me this really amazing thing where I don't know if she made it up or if she had heard it, but she said the medicine and magic is in the story.
Yeah.
But like when you tell a story, there can be so much healing in the.
Absolutely, exactly, and that's why like stuff like AA and like different support groups are super beneficial for people, and that's where I'm like being really called for some reason to use my voice and talk to people, and I don't really know what that looks like, but I know it works. Like I've experienced it, and the people I've worked with and helped them with stuff, they're like, oh my gosh, like talking is just great. Like it's really good, and it not only helps the person release, but it helps everyone else find other ways.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I just kind of added this question in here, so it's not totally following.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we ask people about collaborations, and we're going to collaborate with Om Shala and create a week of citywide meditation to, help with health and peace. Like there's a lot of research about what group meditation does for a town or a city, or so maybe some telling of those stories. Maybe we'll share some of that stuff with community and how meditation has helped us, and
Absolutely.
how we see it helping on a larger scale too. And
yes. Yeah, and just like there's a lot of people are like, I can't sit still in meditation for an hour. And I'm like, who said you have to sit for an hour?
yeah.
And they're like, I'm like, try 3 minutes. They're
Really?
like, I can do that?
Tell you this funny thing that happened this morning. My roommate, she was like, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes. And I was like, okay. And I'm working on a book, and I'm trying to be quiet. And 5 minutes she sits, like, it thunders, it starts pouring out rain. And I'm like, I don't know if you should meditate very much. No, but I mean, even 5 minutes can be so, who knows, like, it was so powerful, just these.
I used to be that way where like I would try and do 20-minute meditations, and sometimes it'd be like, oh, I don't have time.
Right.
And eventually it just clicked. I was like, well, just 5 minutes. And often I found if I did 5 minutes, the timer would go off, and I'd be like, maybe another 5 minutes. Like I wanted to keep going, and it's like that for so many things. Like we make them out to be this big daunting task, but it's like just do a little and like get the momentum going, and then you're like, oh wait, I forgot this is fun and like easier than Does it feel
Yeah,
like work?
if you make it an opportunity instead of a chore,
Yeah.
like, oh, I have this opportunity and maybe
Right.
I want to sit, I
Yeah.
set it for 5 minutes, but maybe I want to sit for 7 minutes.
Mhm.
Right.
And then you allow yourself.
Just
It's-
shifting
yeah.
your perspective.
Yeah.
And like that's another thing I've realized with just being on a sober path. Like, right? Like how many times have we met people, not even just in sobriety, but other things are not, they've quit and they're like, oh, I can't do that anymore. And it's like, well, what? Like, you should be like, yeah, like I haven't done that in a couple of days. Like, go me. Instead of like we have this perception of like, oh, I like can't handle my alcohol or whatever. And it's just like, no, like you're handling like being a human and like stepping into connecting with something deeper. Like you're, right? Like just shifting our perspective a little bit about how we view things. Like it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And just like reminding ourselves of these little tiny tweaks, right? Because it's like, I don't expect someone to sit for 20 minutes in silence
Yeah.
who's never done it before, you know, and just like breaking those misconceptions of like just little here and there, like could just change your life, really.
You know, I had this big conception switch when I watched this movie about happiness, and it said, you know, happiness isn't doing things that bring you up and down, it's doing things that are lasting happiness. And so it makes me realize how much we associate dopamine hits with happiness, and we want to go up and down and up and down. And when you start these other practices, it's more like a long-term lasting, you know, and it's a different kind of, so sometimes you stop and you've associated all your fun
Right.
with drugs or alcohol or dopamine, and so reconfiguring what is fun and what really does feel good, and like even realizing you did things that didn't even feel good, but you told yourself they felt good,
Right.
even though they literally made you sick.
Yep. Yes.
It's craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting, like what that human aspect of us, right? It's like very tricky.
Yeah. Cool. What inspires you to do what you do?
Oh, just honestly watching other people have an experience within themselves. You know, like teaching a class, right, is an offering, and it's an offering for someone to have an experience. And once they have an experience, it's just like, it's like seeing a redwood tree for the first time. You're like, is that real? And you're just like, whoa. And then you're kind of like, you know, taking it all in and realizing how kind of small you are and how just like this thing has endured forever. So it's almost that same thing of like just being like, whoa, there's this energy, force, this field, it's in me, it's with me all the time. It's just a matter of accessing it. And there, yeah, just that like, it's just this bliss. And when I see that on people, or when people are like, wow, that like changed my whole day, or it just changed like how I looked at something for like the last 20 years, like it just like took a weight off there, and I'm like, yes, like that really, I don't know, that does something to me, and just like, yay.
You know, at the end of a lot of classes, people will be like, thank you, and I'm always like, no, thank you, because like you literally changed my day, you made me feel different. Like it is such a gift to watch and be, because you get the experience when they get the experience.
Totally,
You're getting a
exactly.
piece
It's a
of that.
reflection. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
That's so
like,
good.
oh, and now we're all just, you know, I love, every time I see that too, it reminds me of like Ram Dass, right? We're all just here to walk each other home, and it's like, that's essentially what, that's what it is. That's
Yeah.
what it feels like.
That's
So true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of things by myself and like try and like learn how to dance from YouTube or stuff like that. And like after a while, you just kind of lose the momentum or the interest in it. And when I moved up here, I found all these groups that were doing similar things, and then I was like, wow, like I always wondered what it took to make it sustainable. And it's the group setting. Like you can still practice by yourself, but you have this group that you belong to that inspires you, and like when you practice with them, it's like it's almost like the
powerful.
first time again. Yeah, like it's powerful. Yeah.
That energy of just everyone
Yeah.
together. You know, I've been in a room with 200 people doing a practice that is really tough to do, and it's just like we were doing it for 20 minutes. Like what?
Yeah.
Like what? It's just that collective energy. It's really amazing, and I think it's awesome to have, you know, different group settings doing stuff like that, because it reminds you kind of that like we're all kind of flowing together, and we are really just, we're the same, right? Like we're wearing this like outfit, but inside we're all that same, we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So similar.
Just figuring that out.
Yeah.
So how can people find the Crystalline Collective? It's a little hard to find.
It is a little hard to find, because when you get mapped, this is so ironic, it maps you to the bar. I'm like, okay, interesting. So we are located in McKinleyville. We are right behind Ming Tree and across from a bar. But if anyone's familiar with Essential Elements Salon, which is a very well-known place, we share the same door with them. And to access our calendar, you could go onto the crystallinecollective.net. That's the best way, because like life happens, things shift, so that's the best way to be connected. And actually this evening we're doing a sound healing. So we offer so many things: sound healings, yoga, women's circles, and more things.
Who's doing sound healing tonight?
So they're called Numinous, and it's the other woman who, besides myself and Amelia, her name is Chazelle, and her and my husband do the sound healings there. And they're like, I mean, I've seen so many different sound healers, and I love all of them, but when they play, like my mom, I was like, what is happening? Like it's very unique, it's very different. There is this, you know, the singing bowls, and Chazelle sings and she channels light language. So it's very beautiful, and it's like very, very healing. It's very healing. Like if you go to it, just expect to like linger for a little while, because I feel like you kind of get a little high, and you know, you kind of are like out of your body for a little while. And my husband plays the handpan.
Oh,
beautiful.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's really cool.
And you also have Instagram and Facebook too, though, right? Or
yes. I'm technology challenged. So Amelia's been working on this stuff. She just had a baby, so life. We finally have an Instagram that we just started using, and it's crystalline.collective. And then the Facebook, not really sure.
well, I've gone to it. I
think it's,
yeah. You can see a few things on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really know. Yeah, I'm trying to get better with the technology there.
Great.
But,
Yeah, as we all are.
Yeah, we can relate. If you could do anything and you knew you would succeed, what would you want to accomplish?
I would want to accomplish being able to just lead people out of their conditioning and into their true selves, and also hopefully have enough financially to offer scholarships to people who want to do teacher trainings and stuff like that may not be able to afford it. Like I want to make stuff accessible to people.
That's beautiful.
We hope that comes true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. It was
Yes,
so fun.
thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all, and we'll put links below, and we wish you all real peace, real happiness, and real joy.